The Nun is a very discreet horror film that quickly depletes its ideas and has a script full of weaknesses.
Don't look for salvation from The Nun.
The Nun is a sloppy cash grab that further dilutes the Conjuring brand.
The Nun's sins are too many to ever make it interesting.
The franchise worsens with each new episode, hitting an all-time low here.
The Nun nonetheless proves to be the weakest entry in the series so far, and next to Annabelle, that's saying something.
The Nun winds up being a mashup that's far more dead than alive.
A Sunday visit to church would likely be more terrifying.
Welcome to this week's episode of Slept On Cinema. I'm your host, Stan Steamer.
And I'm Grove Street.
This week we are getting into the 2018 horror classic, the second feature of our Conjuring Universe double feature, The Nun.
Just like the first feature, I cannot believe that we get to do this and that qualifies. And it super qualifies. It is very low on the ratings.
It makes, again, I know I say this every single week. We both say this. It doesn't make any sense. I'm blown away this qualifies. It makes me have almost no faith in humanity because of these reviews. But here we are, and it gives us the opportunity to talk about it. As always, the movies that we review on our podcast are all at or below 50 for both critics and audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. And we structure the podcast so that the first half is spoiler-free. We talk about some things to look for in the film, and then we take a break. You can go watch the movie, come back, and talk about what we just watched. Should we get to the rotten premise?
Let's get right into the rotten premise. When a young nun at a cloistered abbey in Romania takes her own life, a priest with a haunted past and a novitiate on the threshold of her final vows are sent by the Vatican to investigate. Together, they uncover the order's unholy secret. Risking not only their lives, but their faith in their souls, they confront a malevolent force in the form of a demonic nun. Critics, 25%. Audience, 35%. I mean, the audience is a little bit higher, but it's still ridiculous how low these scores are. It just feels like this is all of the sin of lies of people who are reviewing this movie.
Oh, yeah. This movie was a smash hit. So the reviews make absolutely zero sense to me. It came out September 7th, 2018. As is not uncommon with our movies, this opened number one. And this opened number one with $53.8 million in its opening weekend, which is bonkers. Total worldwide gross of $365.5 million. This is all on a production budget of just $22 million. So it more than doubled its production budget in the opening weekend alone. So
I think it's the highest grossing movie in the Conjuring universe.
I know it was, at least when it came out. I don't know if that's still true, but certainly when it came out, that may still be true. I have no idea. I just know when it came out, it was the highest grossing film. So it absolutely
incredible
crushed. It takes place in 1952, but it's the earliest film in the franchise, but came out fifth. So fifth in production time, first in sequence of time of sequence events. And one thing that's kind of interesting, and maybe this fed into why they did so well in the box office, they spent $90 million on marketing this, which is, I feel like that it made me think of another film we did, Last Action Hero, where they just pumped so much money into the production budget. We're sending, ads into space and things like that. But clearly they got more bang for their buck because they turned it into just a whopping amount of money.
It does make me think, like, a lot of times I stupidly look at budget and then I look at profits. I'm like, oh wow, and I do the calculation of one minus the other and say, oh, that's how much money they made. I often forget about how much money it takes to promote these movies too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it takes a lot, and I do the same thing. We look at the budget, we look at how much money they made. Like, wow, everyone must have crushed on this, and it's like, oh no, there's a lot of other stuff that goes into it. But I think that this is probably an anomaly. I mean, $90 million of promotion is a ton of money, especially on a $22 million production budget. And
they had the flagged YouTube clip.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they had, and I think this worked out in their favor because they had, I think they ended up having a a YouTube ad that I don't know if you watched it, but it looks like someone is turning the volume down on your computer, and then all of a sudden they get this massive jump scare of the nun just popping into your screen with a big sound. And it was up on YouTube. It was one of these ads that played before whatever YouTube video you wanted to watch was. And it caused problems. People were just getting so scared and startled by this jump scare that YouTube ended up pulling it. They had a policy against shocking content. And this somehow got into the shocking content category. So they pulled it, but it sort of ended up going viral because people were so stunned by it and the fact that it was getting pulled. So that probably helped them getting it banned, I imagine.
I think anytime you're walking the edge of a line, you want to get banned. If you're walking the edge of a horror line, you want to hear that this is too dangerous, too messed up to watch even the trailer. That'll get butts in seats. Absolutely,
especially for this type of film. I mean, this is the type of film you're like, wow, like they had a banned ad. Like I need to see like the overlap of people who want to see a banned ad and who want to see this movie is like the Venn diagram is just concentric circles. So, not a whole lot else to say. I mean, I think I imagine most of our listeners have seen a lot of these films. They're familiar with the franchise. It does essentially, it's sort of like the origin story of the entire franchise, at least to this date. And that's it. There's not a lot else you need to know about. There is, we do have The Nun 2 coming out later this summer. I think that comes out September 8th. I think that it takes place 4 years after the conclusion of this film. So I know some of the main characters are in there. We won't say who, but something to look forward to.
Yeah, I think we both have done this, but I've watched them all in order as they came out. Obviously, when they were coming out, but I've gone back and watched them all chronologically too, and it is such a fun way to do it. Because
I agree. I think watching it in movie chronological order is really interesting.
It's really interesting. It doesn't give anything away, but if you are really intently watching, like we typically do, you can see so many little nods to the other movies, and they just perpetuate that in each movie. And it's just so good how they feed off of each other. So first in chronologically, but you can see how it's all part of a bigger brain scheme in this movie.
And you can also tell in this movie, despite that they only spent $22 million on it, you can tell that there's some success that precluded this. Like they are spending a little bit more money, the effects and things like that. You can tell that more money is being pumped into this than some of the earlier entries in the franchise. Should we do the bolo?
Bolo.
I had a lot of bolos. It was, it's one of these movies, and I'm sure we'll get into this later. It was a bit dark at times, yet I still managed to find quite a few things to be on the lookout for.
The darkness is definitely prevalent in this movie, but let's see what you got for your first bolo.
My first bolo is a cool key. Let's just check bolo one cool key.
Very cool key. I'm a retired phys ed teacher, and I used to have tons of keys for cabinets and everything else in the school. And I've got no keys now, but I never had a cool key. They're all like small mini keys. Mm-hmm. This is a high-end key. You don't need any other keys if you have this key.
Yeah, I remember when I was a really little kid, I wanted to be, people would ask you what you wanted to be when you grew up. And I would for a long period of time, I kept saying a janitor. Mm-hmm. Because the janitor always carried around all these keys. And they seemed so cool.
You can get into any door. Bolo, upside down crosses.
Yes, absolutely. When you see that, you know something is up. Maybe just bolo that and get the hell out. I'm going to say bolo your luggage.
Yep. Let's go with bolo a demonic license plate.
Nice. Nice. I will say bolo a Kill Bill homage.
Oh, nice. Bolo an Amityville reference.
Absolutely. I'm going to say bolo spit. A lot of spit in this movie in multiple different ways it comes up.
I'll cross that off. This is very heavy on the spit. Yep.
Would you say this is the biggest spit movie you've ever seen? There's a boxing movie that involves a lot of spit, but this spit comes up in so many different ways in this film.
The Always Sunny, they broke the Liberty Bell one, had a ton of spitting in it, but that wasn't a movie and it was funny. This is a way different version of spitting. And yes, this is the biggest spit movie I've seen.
We did doll horror, and now we're doing spit horror.
Spit horror. This is it. It's not even spit in your grave. This is completely different. Bolo, a religious meeting looking like a mafia meetup.
Absolutely. Yep. I'm going to say Bolo, the dangerous use of a shovel.
Yep. Bolo, Boris.
Bolo. I'd say Bolo, just a great whistle.
So good.
Very jealous of the whistle that shows up here.
Bolo, and I guess this is sort of a nod to your ability for your house to get haunted right now, but Bolo, tall ceilings. Very tall ceilings.
Absolutely. They're great when they're not haunted. I'm going to say Bolo, old radios. One of my favorites.
Yep, I thought you might like that. Bolo, superpowers.
I'll also follow that up. Maybe just Bolo superstitions.
Good. Bolo, wet blood.
Yep, that definitely comes up. I'm going to say Bolo, the black bear. Just keep an eye.
Bolo, a familiar photo from the Conjuring franchise. Maybe an Annabelle creation. I'm not sure.
Yeah, the way they weave elements through all these films is fantastic.
It's just what you need. The little Easter eggs to encourage you to keep every aspect of each one of these.
Yeah, especially as you mentioned, if you watch these in sort of in tight order and you watch them all within a few weeks or whatever it is, you really pick up on that stuff, which is a lot of fun. I'm going to say Bolo rope.
Bolo deliveries.
I will go Bolo and Ouroboros, which is also just a fun word to say.
Very fun. Bolo, penguins and koalas.
What was it? Penguins and what?
Penguins and koalas.
Ooh, that's a deep cut.
Very deep cut.
I'm gonna maybe go a less of a deep cut and just go Bolo chickens.
I'll do my last one. Bolo, bells ringing.
Yes, that's a great one. I won't even that was the last one I had, but that is a great Bolo.
All right, we're on to drink to pair with the movie. I'll go first on this one. I think just sitting down probably to watch this movie earlier on in the day would be nice in case you're scared of everything that might happen. You sit down with a virgin Bloody Mary. Do whatever you want.
That is a very heady pick.
Yeah, just have a virgin, no alcohol Bloody Mary and enjoy the movie.
That is maybe your most cerebral pick yet.
Well, I ran up my wife because she didn't like my other pick. So
I'm going to say, and there's some issues with my pick, but I'm going to say pair this with an old French wine. I know this takes place in Romania, but there is a central character who's French, and the whole movie, everything about it is just old and musty. And I feel like if you get an old wine that has a little bit, all the fruit flavors gone, I want some of that like forest floor type flavors. That could really go well with this film. But the only caution is there are a lot of startling moments in the film. So just maybe get like a really big glass and don't fill it all the way up or something like that. Otherwise, I don't want you spilling this red wine all over the place. This
movie is big on jump scares, and so our two suggestions of a Bloody Mary and a red wine might not be good for your clothing. So maybe, oversized glasses as well as these drinks.
Yep. And maybe watch it outside if that's an option.
That's even better for sure. All right. You have your drinks to pair with the movie, alcoholic or not. Let's get to the movie, and we'll see you on the other side.
Yeah, enjoy it.
Enjoy.
I had a series of visions when I was younger. And after each one ended, the same thought would be stuck in my head.
What did you see?
I saw a nun. word of my visions reached the church,
And I was asked to accompany a priest to an abbey in Romania.
The abbey has a long history.
Valak.
Not all good.
What?
Finley hit down. Callahan's here.
Hello.
Slept on Cinema is brought to you by Training Ties, the ultimate shoe tying tool. If you know anyone who's struggling with shoe tying, Training Ties is the perfect solution. Or if you know anyone who just doesn't like tying their shoes, Training Ties keep shoes tied all day long. Say no to Velcro and yes to independence with Training Ties.
Welcome back.
Creepy movie. A lot of jump scares.
A lot of jump scares, a lot of just eerie. The whole movie just felt eerie. It was one of those sort of movies that had one of those great feelings to it.
One of our darker movies. I know The Relic was very dark.
Mhm.
This is up there for just, you have these stone-built hallways all around you. No light is getting in outside of what you can bring in, a torch or a candle, and it's just a very dark movie.
I had that exact same thought. It reminded me of The Relic as well. I found myself turning all the lights off watching it at night, and that made it a much better experience.
Yeah, I was watching it, and then someone in the room got up and turned the light on, went to the bathroom, and then I wasn't rude after. I just got up and turned off the light that they left on to go to the restroom because it just doesn't work if you have lights on while you're watching it.
No, and maybe that was intentional too, to make you have to watch it in the dark so that you're creeped out more.
I hope it was, because it worked.
I'll just assume that it was.
All right, you're up for the first pick.
All right, this is another one of these films where I don't feel like there's a slam dunk one of one pick, but I have a lot of things to choose from. But what I'm going to go with is when we talked about doing this movie, there was one scene that stuck in my mind from when I've seen this a handful of times before, but there's one scene that really stuck with me after seeing this. So I'm going with the grave bells generally. I thought, and I know it was one of our bolos, but I thought right when those showed up, it's such a great and creepy element for a story. There's true background behind it from the plague where people are getting buried alive and they want to make sure they have a bell, which is creepy in itself. And that's real and sort of grounded in reality. And then that there's going to be some sort of scene involving this. And then when the priest gets buried alive, he's ringing the bells, and then all the bells are ringing, and she's trying to figure it out. Every scene in that graveyard with the bells was just absolutely fantastic, and that was the one scene really stuck with me from this film.
It tied in where the movie was going, only that we got to see that was like one of the first glimpses really of her like superpowers.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
To isolate his bell from that whole field of fake bells that were going on. So I thought it was important because we got to see why she was really there to begin with.
Yeah, that's a good point because it suddenly made it clear like why they had picked this seemingly random, not even a full-fledged nun yet to accompany him on this trip.
I wonder how many people had to die horribly before they came up with the string in a bell system.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll probably never know, right? Because you just assume they're all dead.
Yeah, they didn't make it out, but maybe a few must have, and like, oh man, we should have an alert system in case the people we buried.
Yeah, there must have been somebody with like a really loud voice. That was like suddenly, could yell through 6 feet of dirt or whatever it is, and they were like, "Oh, we need a better system because most people don't have that loud of a voice."
If there's no bell, are you taking buried alive over like drowning or eaten alive, or where does that sit for like one of the worst ways to go?
It's pretty bad. I mean, I think it's worse than drowning because I think drowning, as bad as it is probably only like a minute or two. Buried alive, like that could go on for days.
Yeah, I can't sleep without headphones, so I can't be left alone with my thoughts. Never mind while I'm being buried alive. So that seems like the worst way to go.
Yeah, I think that it's not as painful as some other ways, but I think that just the duration of it and the knowledge that you're just going to die and there's nothing you can do, there's got to be absolutely that's got to be the worst.
Yeah, it's good they added the bell to it. So that's a great pick. my first pick. I thought just the painting of the nun was incredible. It really translated. It was terrifying, and they were easily able to make it from the painting of the nun to the real nun in the movie, and just like go back and forth. And the painting is terrifying, and so is the nun. So I think the nun painting portrait is my first pick.
Yeah, that's a great one. It's a great way that they obviously tie this through a number of the films.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of this like familiar image that's just super creepy.
And for my second pick, this is a huge thing for me. I'm a huge fan of names of demons. I think it's come up. I can't really remember what episode, but
it came up once before, early on, an early episode. I remember, and now whenever I hear a demon name, that's really interesting. I always think of this.
And I think I even took notes the same way, forgetting about how I did it the last line. But the name Valak for a demon is just so sick. So I got a few here listed. Valak is right up there. We've got Pazuzu from The Exorcist, Abelem from The Last Exorcism, the Lamia from Drag to Hell.
Love the Lamia.
Yeah, so good.
Whenever a fly is buzzing around the house, I was like, oh, there's a Lamia in the house again.
Azazel from Fallen, always good. Paimon from Hereditary, amazing. And I can't pronounce the name. Was it Bugal from Sinister? Whatever it was, whatever they kept saying, Sinister, was amazing. So you have to get the demon name right.
Mm-hmm.
Valak does it. It's that in Romania, it makes sense. It's like
it sounds Romanian. It sounds old.
Yeah,
it sounds really old.
Yeah, Valak and you can be like Valak the Conqueror, Valak the Deranged, whatever. You can just add something on to the end of it. It sounds like it fits.
My only issue with Valak is that it's kind of ruined the pickle brand Vlasic. I know they're not the same, but now whenever I see Vlasic pickles at the store, it makes me think of this demon.
Was it the VL that does it?
I don't know what it is, but they're somehow my brain linked. So now those are like demon pickles.
Yeah, I mean, they still sound delicious. There's not much. So outside of what it does to pickles, I'm going to take the name Valak as an awesome demon name.
It is great. Like I said, it's like it feels old. Like it feels like it's been like demon that's been around for centuries. Like it's not like, I don't know, Steve.
No, it's not Steve at all.
All right, I'm going to take, I don't even know how you pronounce her name. Teysa Farmiga? Is it Teysa?
I don't know. I was going to do the same thing. Yeah, I wasn't going to say it first. I've avoided saying it this entire time because I didn't want to say it first.
Yeah, understandable. So apologies to Teysa if we're mispronouncing her first name, but I thought she absolutely crushed this role. Like she was so believable in like a pretty tough role where you're sort of, again, this like you're a nun in training and there's sort of all that goes into the like purity and all that, but then also being this like really tough person that's confronting all these things and going through and dealing with all these visions and having to battle these nuns. And she was just so good and so believable. I thought she absolutely crushed it. I also liked that like we kind of had a history with her because I don't know if you've watched any of the American Horror Story seasons, but she's been in a number of those as a younger actor. So you sort of like have this history of her in these like creepy roles, which is kind of nice in a weird way. And then the fact that she's the younger sister of the main character from the primary Conjuring movies was kind of just like a nice little wrinkle because we know that they're all tied in. The characters aren't necessarily related to one another in the movie, but it just like adds another element that sort of sticks in your brain a little bit. And I know the director was really hesitant to cast her because she was the younger sister, but I think that actually kind of works in its favor.
Yeah, sisters in a movie about sisters. This really did well, and I feel like we get to talk about her as if she's like some celebrity who's in some of these movies, but she's awesome in everything that she's in. I mean, there was the obviously Murder House plus a number of the other seasons on American Horror Story. When I watched this, I went back and watched Final Girls, which is an awesome
that movie's great
horror movie whatever she's in, and she's like not even like a scream queen. She's something else. I know scream queens usually are the ones that live, but she's like the hero, not even like the scream queen, you know, like it's a new version of that in horror movies. And she does it so well. I think she's going to go on to just have a huge career because she's just crushing horror right now.
I completely agree. I mean, she's an amazing actress. She's like in every single thing she's in, she just blows everyone else away.
Some of the scenes could have been a little goofy, I think, in this if she wasn't so good in it. So maybe we slept on not having her not be the first pick of this movie because it really could have been her.
Easily. Absolutely easily. I mean, I think without her in this role, I think we're probably not doing this movie on this podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah. It definitely doesn't get all the millions that it got in the box office with her. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool. We probably should have picked her earlier, but that's a great pick.
All right. My third pick. I'm going to go with just the foreboding feeling throughout the entire movie. I think they did that with some of the darkness. They did that with the sounds. Like the sounds of this movie were great and very foreboding, eerie chanting.
I hate to interrupt you, but can I just add my pick to this too? Because the eerie chanting is mine, and I don't want to like talk about it again. So I mean, like the foreboding. Yeah, exactly. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think that's right, and it's maybe an unfair pick for me to take because it takes so many of these elements, including stealing your pick right from under you. But it's all those elements combining the sounds, the visuals, the feeling of the whole thing was just very eerie, the entire time, and that's just like a great way to dress up a film like this.
Absolutely, you picked the cinematography in the last one, in Annabelle. And I think this is right up there with it. It's so well done, and the music is so good. And the Valak having her own just chorus of groanings every time she came around is incredible. You always knew when she was going to pop out, I think, because of that, or when she might pop out. And I don't think many demons have their own little like chorus music behind them. And it was the perfect selection for this because it was so
great. The demon definitely did just right with its chorus of groans.
That's a great pick, and that was my third pick involved there too. So I want to get right to my sleeper pick. So many good ones here. I really enjoyed Frenchie after he was attacked. This is my sleeper pick. Frenchie after he was attacked in the graveyard with all of the crosses out there in the graveyard. He had the nun drop on him. He just picked up a huge cross and brought it with him to the bar.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, how else are you going to handle that situation? I need a little protection, and I need to be like, what the hell just happened? I need to go to Black Bear Bar.
Yep, I love that. It's a great pick, and I love how it was sort of like totally unquestioned. People are just like, yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, if I was there, man, I would have 2 of those crosses. So
Yeah, that's a great pick. And he was a great character too. I know we teased this a little bit earlier, but in The Nun 2, we do have both Thaisa Farmiga and I don't have his name in front of me, but the actor that plays Frenchie, they're both back.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
I'm really torn between 2 things here for my sleeper pick. So I'm just going to make 2 picks because it's our podcast and that's what we can do. So I'm taking 2 things. One, I'm just taking torches. I love a good torch.
You know, I almost took torch for my sleeper, so this is perfect. Frenchie's has a great one.
It's an amazing torch. I love just the idea of torches. Like they always last longer than I'm expecting they will. They cast just a ton of light. I wish I had more opportunities in my life to use a torch. Whenever in the few opportunities I have used torches, it's fantastic. So I'm just going, anytime a torch shows up, I'm all in.
Is that the Indiana Jones in you? I feel like there's a lot of torches.
Oh, yes. I mean, I'm sure this all goes back to my absolute love of Indiana Jones. That's probably the greatest torch movies of all time.
Yeah. Next to this, or they're 1 and 1. Yeah.
Yeah. 1A, 1B.
1A, 1B.
And my other sleeper pick is I'm just going to take like animals knowing things.
Oh, that was my anti-pick. All right, go ahead.
Just scooping you left and right
Yeah,
today.
we left and right. That's
just,
cool. Transfer me from my anti-pick, so go ahead.
I
This
just,
is one answer for both of us, right?
yeah.
So, all right, where we both pick animals knowing things.
Animals knowing things. And it's just, I love totally believe that animals pick up on a whole bunch of stuff that we don't. And clearly here the horses were like, hell no, I'm not going over there. They don't listen to them. They obviously should have, or maybe they shouldn't have. I don't know. They were sort of heroes here. But I just love that idea that animals pick up on things that humans might not.
Yeah, and that it's just completely disregarded. In the last Annabelle movie, I did the anti-pick of like just not listening to your wife when she's being like, hey, this crazy thing happened. You're like, oh, stop it. And when your horse stops in the middle of the trail because there's too much terror ahead and evil, you're right. They were heroes, but in general, just listen to the animals.
Yeah.
They get it.
Yeah. Tend to your chickens. Go back to the bar.
Yeah.
Listen to the horse.
Listen to the horse always. If they're afraid to cross that little area, then you shouldn't either.
100%.
All right, this brings us to our superlative of favorite nun.
Yeah, it's great because this movie is The Nun, and there's obviously one possessed nun, but there are actually several nuns in the film. So I think it makes sense that we dive a little deeper into the several nuns that we meet.
I would like you to go first, but then I have a question after you answer.
All right. So there are a couple picks here that you could make, but I'm going with Sister Victoria, and I know she sort of gets she hangs herself right in the beginning of the film, and it is an interesting juxtaposition after just having watched Annabelle, which ends with someone sacrificing themselves for the greater good, and then here we have the same concept of Sister Victoria hanging herself, sacrificing herself, which is obviously a big no-no in the Catholic Church, but she's doing it, even being a nun, knowing how frowned upon this is, to save everyone else so that this demon can't take a vessel and escape. And that was just a really stand-up move. And obviously she does come back later and as a sort of zombie demon, or I don't know what you call those sort of nuns later, and gets decapitated. So she also gets a nice little secondary run.
That's a great pick. And the part I thought was so cool about it is like, this is as devout of a nun as you're going to find. They're cloistered. Like they're not they're not going anywhere. They're very aware of how the sin of self-murder or suicide is like really, really bad. And even came up with the priest in the Vatican meeting there, like, oh yeah, suicide's really bad. But she still did it anyway because it was for a greater good. So it wasn't suicide. It was a sacrifice. But for her to be able to make that switch must have taken a lot.
Must have taken a lot. And you see that she's terrified and clearly does not want to do this. So it's not, she has to overcome so much in herself to do this. And it's just it's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's a great pick. Mine isn't as good. I mean, I'm probably just going to take Sister Irene. She was my favorite for sure. She has superpowers and she knows what's going on. I was close to taking Sister Oana, who was her like guide through the fake, the dead.
Yeah, I considered Oana as well. She just seemed so nice.
So nice. So nice. She's got all this nonsense going on around her, but she's centered and she's there.
And she also had a really fantastic sort of second run as a zombie, where she ends up, getting set on fire and shot.
Yeah, rough results for someone so nice, for sure. But I have a question for you: The Nun. Who is the titular character in The Nun?
So, I mean, I think it's the possessed.
You think it's Valak?
The nun in the painting.
Sure. It's Valak, is what you think.
That was what my interpretation was. What do you think?
I'm not sure.
You think it could be the nun in training? You think it could be?
It's Irene, right? That's her name?
Sure.
Farmiga, whatever,
Yeah,
Murder House Girl. Yeah, I think it could be her too. I don't know which one it is. She became the nun.
that's true. She does become the nun.
She's in the second one, from what I can tell from the casting.
And in many ways, she's actually the only nun that is really in the movie.
Yeah, the demon isn't really a nun.
The demon's not a nun. All the rest of the nuns are dead, except for the very beginning. So she,
Right.
putting aside the opening sequence,
She's
she
the
is the
only
only
nun.
actual nun,
Right.
but
So,
only
like,
at the end.
sure, but the movie, like, maybe the nun is about her and
That's
not.
true.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, one change to be a blockbuster. Mine's really quick. I just need a couple daylight scenes. I watched this like 3 or 4 times, and right around 40 to 50 minutes, I kept getting a little. I enjoyed the movie a ton, but I get a little yawny. It's just like you're just deep in
Mhm.
this abbey, and there's no sunlight, and you're just like, all right, they're going around by candlelight again. Fine, that's great. I just need to maybe go outside during the day at one point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a sort of similar point, and I think this was probably one change to make it a blockbuster, in a sense that maybe more people would have watched it. It was the same with The Relic. We talked about this before. It was dark, and when I was sitting in my living room at night with the lights off, this movie was fantastic. But then at one point, it was the middle of the day. I was watching it on an iPad, and it was hard to see what was going on in a lot of the scenes. So I do assume that this is a movie meant to be watched in the dark, and I kind of like that they made that choice to almost force you to watch it in the dark. But I do think if it's going to really be a blockbuster, more of a blockbuster, that probably not everyone is like up for watching the entire movie in the dark all the time.
And this is the problem with our category, but not a problem either. I love addressing it. It was as much of a blockbuster as you can be.
Oh yeah,
So we're critiquing something to be something that it already was. So they intended for it to be a dark movie, and it was one of them at the time the most successful Conjuring movie that was out there. There's no more successful than that for a horror movie.
oh yeah.
So our critique probably wouldn't have done better. But
Yeah, I mean, we don't know anything.
we don't know anything, and we just have to come up with something for this movie. It was really good, and but I would have liked a couple daylight scenes, just wake me up a little bit. Spin-off ideas. You got any?
Yeah, this is always tough. I feel like it was tough here, and in the Conjuring universe, obviously, because there are so many spin-offs and different things going on. So it's tough to do. But my idea for the spin-off, and I do feel like they're going to make this movie at some point, which will be nice because it's always fun when they make our spin-off ideas. But I want to say, let's go further back in time. Let's go all the way back to the Duke of St. Carta. They had those couple scenes where they show him writing those crazy devil books, opening up the portal, killing a whole bunch of people, himself getting decapitated. Let's just see that whole story run its course. I'm sure it's awesome. I feel like the way this franchise works, where they sort of show you little snippets to tease you with something, and then they end up going all in. I feel like they only show that as a precursor for them actually doing this. So I'm pretty confident that this will become a movie in the not too distant future.
It's their trailer experiment. Like, how does this resonate? Ooh,
Yep.
they're excited for it. All right, cool. Let's make this an actual movie, which they will.
Yeah, so I think that would be a lot of fun. It's obviously going to go hundreds of years back, so it's really going to expand the timeline. But why not? Let's see it.
Well, that would fit because the nun is the oldest timeline. Let's keep it that way. Let's keep going backwards.
Yeah.
That's a great one. I'm doing the same thing as you, but just not as far back. I want to see where Thais's Formiga's when she was found out by the church, like her visions that were happening, and her parents who thought that she was, mentally insane or even worse, a liar. I want to know what was going on then.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe inflate a little bit with a crazy scenario, but I want to see why the church is so locked into her, what her visions were that got the eye on her, and she's not even like a real nun yet, but she's super high up in the Vatican's Rolodex of people to associate with familiar terrors in a territory. Not Romania, but, the territory of weird stuff that happens.
I like to think that the Vatican has like a power ranking system of nuns.
He was up there pretty high without.
Yeah, she had to be. She was a huge sleeper pick for somebody.
He has not a lot of time in the field, but her potential and where she came from, she already sees stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like drafting the high school player in the straight from high school to the NBA.
Oh, absolutely.
It's also, I feel like that's a great pick because I'm super curious as to like the time period or the decision point when someone makes the decision, I want to become a nun. That's such a, I don't know, at least for anyone I know, so out of left field, such a non-standard path for life that, and maybe it was different back then, but that's just, I'd like to see some more about what goes into that decision-making process.
For sure. All of that I would love to be explored. All right. Do you got anything else in the notes we haven't covered yet?
Let's see. I always love in movies where they're looking around with flashlights. I feel like that's one of those things that always looks great on TV and is always or on like a movie screen, and it's always super creepy. They did that well here.
You saw the Valak license plate, right?
Yep, that's good.
Very good. It's near the luggage scene, if anyone's wondering. God ends here. I feel like I wouldn't go into that room.
Yeah, I would definitely not go into that room. No one should ever go into that. That's what you put on a door when it's just like, you don't want to put do not enter because people are just going to want to go in there. But God ends here seems like that's like a pretty firm, let's not go there.
I didn't know what an abbess or abbot were before this movie.
Yeah, it's the same. I didn't realize what cloistered meant. I guess I should have, but it just never crossed my mind. So I learned a lot from this film.
I agree. Learned a lot about religious stuff that was probably told to me, but I didn't listen to. But now I'm watching a horror movie, so now I listen to it.
I like just the old-timey luggage. Like they had these boxy suitcases, and Frenchie had just these like burlap sacks. And I thought I like that. Great touch.
Great luggage.
But yeah, that's really all I had. I think we hit all the high points.
Yeah, that's all I got too. Cool.
All right. Well, it was so exciting to be able to do 2 films from this awesome franchise. I doubt we'll ever be able to do any more, but fingers crossed. You never know.
Yeah. Hopefully the rest of the movies crush it and somehow still make our podcast.
Yeah.
What do we have up next?
Up next, we have another film that is coming out with a summer sequel. We are diving into The Meg, another creature feature. It's been a little while since we've done a creature feature.
It's been, but we're going back to our roots. We are a creature feature fan base here, and I'm super excited for The Meg. I saw this once. When did this come out? Do you remember when it came out?
I don't remember offhand. 5 years ago? I don't know.
Okay, yeah. I know Statham is in it. And
10 years ago?
10, 20? I don't know. We have Statham, and we have a huge shark. So I don't see how this could be a bad time.
Yeah. It's an awesome film. I can't wait to get into it.
Cool. This was a lot of fun, and we'll see you next time.
Later.